Dear Logan, Alaska is really big and really pretty, but it's also lonely. Sometimes I ask Dad why we're here, and he says it's for our health, or because I'm almost old enough that he was going to have to beat off the boys with sticks if we stayed in D.C. I don't think that's it though. If it is, he's found a place where the stick to boy ratio is probably the highest on the earth. Maddie. Logan didn't know what time it was. Usually he was good about that stuff. Finding north, finding how much daylight must be left. Maybe it was from spending so much of his life surrounded by the Secret Service. Logan had received more than a few lessons from well-meaning agents on knowing when someone looks out of place in a crowd or when a vehicle just doesn't fit in. Someone even told him once that if his father hadn't been a president, he might have been a good candidate for the Blackthorn Institution, whatever that was. It didn't even have a website, so it felt weird not knowing where he was or where he was going. When Logan when Logan remembered how far north they were and how close they were to the shortest day of the year, he had to wonder how much daylight even remained. He knew there were parts of Alaska that didn't get any sun at all in the middle of the winter, and some that got a few hours, some that got more. But Logan didn't know that much about this part of the state. Alaska was more than twice the size of Texas, after all. And then Logan had to hand it to the man and his back. There was no better place to get lost. Maybe that was why it took him a moment to realize that someone was talking. It took a moment to realize that no one was talking to him. Logan turned slowly. The storm had broken for a moment, and a rare bit of sunlight broke through the heavy canopy of trees. Some rainwater puddled on the ground, and Logan realized that it was starting to freeze. Now that they weren't moving, he could feel it. The air wasn't just chilly anymore, it was downright cold. He stomped his foot on and wanted to put his hands in his pockets, but they were both still cuffed in front of him and grown numb. Logan had no idea if it was from the tight cuffs or the cold air. It didn't matter. It was the same person's fault either way. "Nyeh," the man said, and something about it made Logan want to laugh. Then Logan saw the telephone. He actually wanted to laugh harder. "There's no signal, dude," he yelled. The words seemed to echo in the vast wilderness. "Shut up," the man spat in English. Then he turned his back to Logan. He pulled a satellite phone to his ear and started talking fast in Russian. And something in the sound of those grammatal vowels and consonant made Logan shiver in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. He remembered the feeling of his shoulder hitting the wall as the men rushed down the center of the corridor. The flutter of red dress, the piercing pain of the bullet sliding through his arm, and the blood. Then, and the sounds of Maddie's screams. Maddie was gone. She'd been gone for what felt like ages. It was true. But now she was the kind of gone that he couldn't pretend away. He just got her back. And this man had taken her from him. "I just got her back." Logan didn't even realize he was yelling until the man spun and stared at him. The phone was to his ear, and now that he was facing Logan couldn't hear every word. Logan's Russian could hear every word. Logan's Russian wasn't perfect, but he recognized, "Yes, I have the boy." And when he heard it, Logan wanted to smile at the words, not at what they were, but that he understood them. The morning after the night, Logan's dad had pushed Logan's wheelchair down the hall to see Maddie's dad. Afterwards, on his ride back, Logan had turned to his father and said, "I'm going to learn Russian." His dad was still running a hand over the registration letter that Mr. Manchester had given him, handwritten on hospital stationery. He must have understood what was happening, how much everything was going to change. Even if Logan didn't yet realize that the president losing the head of his Secret Service detail meant the first son was also going to lose his best friend. Did you hear me? Logan had said. I'm going to learn Russian. Okay, his father told him. Go ahead. So he had. It was perhaps the one good decision Logan had ever made in his life, and at least it was the only one that seemed worthwhile in that moment. Yes, I am certain we will not be followed, the kidnapper said. He looked directly in Logan's eyes, and Logan tried to keep the same look of enraged indifference that he had before. He couldn't let on that he understood. It might be the only weapon he had, and he wasn't going to lose it too soon. Is the plane ready? The kidnapper asked. Where we will be there. You just need to make sure we have a doctor. Only the last part surprised Logan. He had made a conscious effort to school his features, hide his reaction. Only he thought about it, and it made sense. Logan wasn't really hurt yet, after all. But if he was if he kept annoying this guy, he would be. And whoever this man was working for, whatever their motivation might be, no one drags the president's son through the wilderness in the storm if they don't need him alive. They need me alive, Logan thought, but that didn't bring him any comfort. They thought he might be a pawn, a useful tool. They thought he had a value. Logan would have laughed if it hadn't been so funny. Instead, Logan, he just said, he hates me. The man took off his pack, slipped the satellite phone into a side pocket, and quickly drew the zipper shut, but not before Logan noted which pocket the phone was in. It was like he hadn't spoken at all, like maybe he was speaking another language, so he said again, louder, he hates me. Finally, the man looked up, and Logan couldn't help but cock an eyebrow. Careful not to tip his hand. That was a ransom call, wasn't it? Logan lied, and Maddie's killer seemed pleased to realize that the first son was so stupid, as everyone said. It had always been Logan's best intention to keep it that way, no more than ever. If that was a ransom call, I hope you asked for a miracle, because the President of the United States hates me. Maybe it sounded like fear or anger or moody teenager angst, but Logan wasn't really ready for the sight of the Russian dropping to a log and asking, "So, are you saying I should kill you now?" No, Logan shook his head. I'm saying you should let me go. You see, he doesn't actually care what happens to me. But he would care a great deal if he were to be embarrassed. If someone took something that belongs to him, he needed to make an example out of that somebody. So you'd be better off just letting me go. The kidnapper studied Logan, as if the intelligence had been given off. Like maybe the first son wasn't so sloppy and stupid. Like maybe he might have also been a little insane. It was okay, Logan thought. There were times when his insanity could be beneficial. If you're right, and there's no one looking for me, then that means no one knows I'm missing, yet. If you let me go, I might stay that way for a while. You could be long gone, back to wherever you came from, before anyone even starts to care. The man leaned closer, his accent heavier. I will care. Logan shook his head. Like this man with the knife and the gun, like this man who had hit Maddie in the head and kicked her in the gut and pushed her off the edge of a cliff, like she was a pebble and he wanted to see how far she would fly. Logan looked at him like he was the weak one, the one destined for disappointment. When the words came, they were actually filled with pity. You're not going to get what you want. But the Russian stood slowly and leaned closer. I already have what I want. For a second, Logan actually believed him. It took a moment for him to remember. You don't seem to understand how this whole hostage business works. See, you take me, then you trade me for something infinitely more valuable. Get up, the man said, as if Logan hadn't spoken at all. We have lost too much light already. That was when Logan had realized the sun wasn't where it should be. The days were so short. Logan had no idea what time it was. He only knew that when he started to stand, his head pounded, the earth tilted, and the meal he shared with Maddie and her father last night seemed ages ago. Move, the man shouted. Logan didn't want to do anything, but he knew he couldn't just sit there. He couldn't just die there, because then he wouldn't be able to kill this man later. So he swallowed his pride and asked, "Do you have anything to eat?" "We'll eat when we rest. We rest when we lose the light." "That's a great plan," Logan told him. "But I didn't have breakfast, and we're not going to make any time until I get a little gas in the tank. I'm no good to you this way." The thing that Logan hated the most was how much that was true. Maybe that's why the man believed him, because a moment later he was swinging off his back and digging into a compartment, tossing Logan something that looked like an energy bar. The writing was in Russian, some brand name Logan didn't know. But when he ripped the package open and dug in, eating just the same. "You eat while we walk," the man said, pushing Logan up the hill. "What? No beverage? Beverage? I was hoping a nice latte." The Russian threw him in the canteen so quickly that Logan was actually surprised he caught it. "Now walk," the man said. Maddie was surprised when she finally heard talking. It had been long since she'd been used to any voices. That was the weirdest thing about her new life. It wasn't just the lack of people, it was the lack of sound. There was no radio in her world, no television, no YouTube, or whatever internet thing kids were into. A dozen different fates could have come and gone, and Maddie wouldn't have known they existed. Sure that her dad brought her the newspaper and magazines. Sometimes she watched movies they had on DVD. She also she had her mom's old CD collection, and sometimes when Maddie was feeling all alone, she'd blast the soundtracks from the nice 90s movies just as loud as she could and dance around the cabin like no one was watching, because no one was. But most days, Maddie's world was silent, except for a sound of birds and running water, chainsaws, and the crack of the tree makes before it falls. Voices didn't belong in the forest. When Maddie had heard them, they sounded like music. But the voices meant Logan was still alive. Of course, if he kept talking to the man the way he wouldn't be for long. Maddie took some degree of comfort from the knowledge that she probably wasn't the only person in these woods who was really, really wanted to kill him. When Logan shouted, "I just got her back!" something inside Maddie froze. She wondered for a moment if maybe she'd spent too long away from civilization. Maybe some words changed meaning while she was away, because Logan sounded like someone who had just lost their very best friend. Maddie might have felt sorry for him if she hadn't lost her own best friend years ago. She made herself stay in the shelter of the trees, listening, watching. Logan is alive. Maddie thought again. For the first time in hours, she really let herself breathe. She seemed more mad than afraid. She'd never seen him look like that before. Maybe he looked like that all the time. Now, maybe this was how he did teenage Agnes. Maybe all boys did. It wasn't like she knew anyone to compare him to. But no, it was more than that. Logan was going to kill the man who'd taken him, kill the man who'd hurt her. And right then, Maddie's biggest worry was making sure he didn't get himself killed first. Logan ran his sleeve over his mouth, or sleeves rather. His hands were still cuffed, but he kept the energy bar. In one, the canteen in another. He had the feeling that he should be savoring this, committing to the feeling of food and water to memory. He might not taste either one for a very long time. "So what's your name?" Logan wanted to sound casual, maybe crazy. The same person would be terrified by now, he knew, ranting and rambling and promising to give the man with the gun anything he wanted. But Logan had learned a long time ago that there was nothing you could give a man with a gun and make him happy. Men with guns were only satisfying when they took, and Logan was going to hang on to the very last of his self-respect as long as he could. As long as he possibly could. So he took another bite and asked, "Is it Jimmy?" Logan plasters on a smile and looked back over his shoulder at the man who might have been his shadow if the sun had not gone back behind the clouds. "Bob?" Logan guessed again. "Matthew? Mark? John? Luke? Larry? Steve?" He watched the man closely, and when the Russian's eyes twitched, Logan was proud of himself for seeing it. He might have laughed. It's Stefan, isn't it?" Stefan didn't answer, but he didn't have to. Logan already knew he was right. He took a big bite of his bar and turned to keep on walking. "I met some of your countrymen once. Well, I didn't so much meet them. I just watched them trying to kidnap my mother." "Keep walking." The words were meant to be a jab in the back, but Logan didn't much care. Somewhere in the big wilderness, there was a plane waiting for on them, and doctors just in case. Wherever his final destination, it probably wouldn't be as cozy as in the middle of the trees and rocks, long among the rain and the temperatures that were both falling too fast for comfort. Somehow, Logan knew that very shortly, this place and time might feel like a vacation. "These bars are good. You want a bite?" "Shut up!" Now Stefan was one who looked like he was stuck somewhere he didn't want to be, doing something he didn't want to. Logan just shook his head. "Manners, Stefan." But it was a mistake, because in an instant the knife was out. "Do you think you are cute? Funny? I need you, but I don't need your tongue. In fact, I see a great deal of benefit in relieving you of it right here, right now." The kind of wet weather creek had sprung up during the storm as rainwater collected on the hillside, racing down towards the river below. When Stefan stepped forward, his foot landed in the water, but it looked like he didn't even feel the chill. His rage was so hot that Logan half expected to see steam. Logan held his hands up, stepped away. "Hey, I'm just making an honest offer." Logan glared. "I'm making you an honest threat." "I can see that," Logan said somberly. "You're obviously a man of your word." "Walk," Stefan ordered, and Logan did as he was told. It was only after a few steps that he exhaled. Suddenly, grateful that there wasn't a knife in his back. "So just out of curiosity, what do you think I'm worth?" he asked when he couldn't help himself. "I mean, it isn't often a person's put in the open market. What's going rate for President's son these days? Is it more or less than what you guys were going to get for my mother? According to accounting for inflation, of course." Logan didn't know what to expect. A knife, a gun, maybe a nice hard shove into the freezing water. He couldn't have been more surprised when the man said, "I did not take your mother." "I know you didn't," Logan told him. "You are what, my age then?" He didn't much more than a kid now. No, he wasn't much more than a kid now. Logan tried to remind himself. But kids are sent into war zones every day. Kids can be psychopaths. Kids can kill. Logan straightened. If I had tried to take your mother, she would have been taken." It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple fact of life. And Logan couldn't keep from saying, "I believe you." "Good. Now walk." And the man stepped in front of Logan as to lead the way. But with every step of the echoing pulse that had been beating inside of Logan's head for hours grew louder and louder. "Maddie is dead. Maddie is dead. Maddie is..." When Logan stumbled over one of the big rocks near the stream, his hands plunged into freezing water, breaking his fall. "Maddie is dead," he thought one more time. Before Logan even realized what he was doing, his cuffed hands were digging in the ground. He was kicking the rock that was so big, but not too big. It was jagged, and even his cold hands, Logan could feel the sharp perfect edges. With the sound of the rain hitting the leaves and the gurgling of the stream, it was almost too easy to sneak up on the man. Logan knew he had one shot. If Stefan didn't go down immediately, there'd be a fight. If the knife and gun would come into play, which was fine. Logan didn't care about getting stabbed, getting shot. Logan only cared about the weight of the stone and the timing of the step. He raised his arms overhead and said a prayer and saw it. He had to blink, certain it was a mirage, a sign, but it wasn't the kind of sign he was expecting. So he stepped a little closer, certain that there couldn't really be a piece of gold dangling from the tree limb there in the middle of the storm and in the middle of nowhere. Had Logan seen it? No, had Stefan seen it? Maybe he thought it was strange, but insignificant. After all, he hadn't chosen the charm bracelet 6 years. After all, he hadn't chosen the charm bracelet 6 years ago. Placed it on his best friend's wrist. He hadn't known to stand in the rain and whisper, "Maddie." Logan told himself that she must have left it there, lost it ages ago. But no. The bracelet was too clean, and the force was too large, and the girl was too tough to die that easily. Logan should have known. What are you doing back there? Stefan's voice came cutting through the mist. So Logan dropped the rock and grabbed the bracelet. He held the canteen to the leaves and was draining rain and water like a fountain, refilling the canteen. Less water, more walking, the big Russian yelled. Stefan didn't see the way Logan scanned the woods around them, looking for the girl who might have been too careful to be seen. He had no idea. He was outnumbered.